Mom's shocking remark after CEO's security searches single dad's bag reveals the unexpected truth. Jake stood in the background, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. The last semblance of joy faded as the towering figure of the CEO drifted into his periphery. Moments before, he had been enjoying an afternoon meant to be a simple outing with his daughter, Lily. But here he was, gripping the tattered straps of a canvas backpack that had seen better days, anxiously assessing the widening divide between him and the polished crowd. He felt like an intruder in a world that didn't want him. His hands trembled slightly, not from the heat, but from the tightening coil of humiliation. Would they see a mechanic, a single father struggling to make ends meet, or the man he wanted to be a protector, a role model for Lily? As he shifted his weight from one foot to another, he caught sight of her radiant smile, a beacon of innocence that sparked both pride and pressure. Could they truly enjoy this moment, or would it end in embarrassment fueled by class division? The CEO's security team started their meticulous sweep through the attendees. Panic danced in Jake's chest, a visceral reaction that sent vibrations through him. They were closing in. Just then, he felt a tap on his shoulder, a gentle reminder of the almost unbearable weight of his responsibilities. He locked eyes with Lily, who appeared unfazed and optimistic, a counterbalance to his churning thoughts. "It's fine, Dad," she whispered, yet he couldn't help but sense the impending storm brewing. As security officers approached, their blank expressions reflected authority, and he braced himself. This was more than just a bag search, it felt like a judgment call on his whole life. Would this be the moment they reduced him to a headline, something worthy of scorn, instead of respect? The officer's hand reached for the zipper, and Jake's stomach lurched. He held his breath, his mind racing. Had he even packed anything of substance? He remembered the leftover sandwich from lunch, some worn-out tools, and a hastily scribbled homework assignment Lily had not yet completed. Before he could swallow his mounting embarrassment, Lily erupted. "What's in our bag doesn't define us." Her voice sliced through the air, firm and unwavering. The moment hung suspended, the crowd shifting their focus as whispers rippled around him. The assistant next to the CEO sneered, a look of disdain painted across her face, while the whole world seemed to lock in on Jake. He couldn't move. He wanted to flee, deflate, disappear from the spotlight and the eyes that bore into him. But there was no escape. His identity, everything he poured his heart into, was now exposed, scrutinized amidst chlorinated laughter from the other side of the park. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The atmosphere grew oppressive as Jake's brain spiraled into desperation, battling feelings of inferiority and confusion. He glanced at Lily, whose eyes sparkled with defiance, yet he felt the pressure of their reality. What dignity could he salvage from this space, stained by class and expectations? He could feel the weight of the community's judgment looming overhead, as if the very air conspired against him. Could he leverage this moment, redefine it somehow? Or would he simply be another casualty in an unwinnable battle for respect? The questions clawed at him, relentless, as his fists clenched around one more chance to reclaim his narrative. The crowd's murmurs crescendoed, swirling with anticipation, and as they looked to him for resolution, Jake realized the fight for validation had only just begun. Jake's mind raced, caught in a cyclone of conflicting emotions. Time seemed suspended as he took in the scene: the CEO's polished entourage, the curious gazes of privileged attendees, and the disapproving sneers from certain quarters. Lily's innocent declaration echoed in his ears, and for a moment, he embraced a flicker of courage. What if he turned this moment around? What if vulnerability could evoke understanding instead of judgment? "Lily, listen," Jake whispered, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "I love you, and I want you to know that while they may see our bag as a reason for mockery, it's our story to tell." The intensity in her gaze mirrored his own fear and hope. We're more than what we carry. We will show them. He stood up, heart pounding more profoundly than ever, a mixture of panic and resolve filling him. Staring at the officers, he challenged himself to break through the silence wrapping around him like a shroud. "Wait," he announced, his voice steadier than he felt. "Instead of judging what's in our bag, why not understand what's in our lives?" The air thickened with tension. All eyes shifted back to Jake, the whispers fluctuating into an uneasy silence. His chest tightened, but he pressed on. "In here, yes, there are tools and remnants of a busy life. But they represent more than just items. They represent responsibility, learning, and love bound up in the mess of life." He could see a shift. His words struck a chord with some. A few faces in the crowd softened, perhaps recognizing their own struggles masked beneath tailored suits and designer dresses. But skepticism loomed large near the front lines, drawn by the CEO's assistant. She scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "What a sob story," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. It would have been easy to retreat, to let her taunts embed a deeper sense of shame. But as Jake glanced at Lily, her unwavering belief in him solidified his resolve. "This isn't a sob story, it's a declaration. A testament to the lives we all live beyond this glossy surface." In that instant, he felt a warmth in his chest. Was this empowerment? Was it a glimpse of the role model he desired to be for Lily? "We survive, we thrive. Just like every person here, we have hopes and dreams. My daughter is destined for greatness, and I will do everything in my power to help her achieve that." He noticed a few heads nodding among the crowd, as if encouraging him. Perhaps this moment could be the launch pad for change, not just for himself, but for others who felt pushed aside in their pursuits. Yet, shadows of doubt flickered beneath the surface. Was this enough? Would the crowd truly rally behind the authenticity he laid bare, rather than dismiss him as a mere spectacle? Turning back to the security officers, he added, "You don't just see a bag. You see our lives, our struggles, and our undeniable spirit." The words left his mouth not just as a plea but as a declaration of his existence. He inhaled deeply, his heartbeat syncing with the rising energy around him. Leaving room for belief felt risky, a dangerous gamble. Yet, the innate power of authenticity surged through him, his disposition elevating even as uncertainty lurked in his peripherals. Would they dare to dismiss him? Or was this the beginning of a new chapter, one where he cherished individuality over insecurity? As the CEO stared back, quiet intrigue flicker across his features, Jake sensed a change in the atmosphere. Something was shifting. A decision loomed on the horizon, one that would either solidify his truth or further entrench him in shame. The time had come to face the narratives that sought to define him, and as he prepared for their judgment, a chilling question hung in the air: who would write the ending of this story? Jake held his breath as the CEO regarded him, the silence heavy with unspoken words. What had begun as a moment of vulnerability felt like it could easily spiral back into mockery. But the CEO's eyes, piercing yet contemplative, seemed to stoke a flicker of hope deep within him. Jake fought to suppress the fear threatening to overwhelm him, honing in on the ache in his chest that screamed for validation. He felt the connection with Lily as if it were a tether. She had always buoyed him through turbulent tides of self-doubt, but now those tides seemed to ebb with her gaze. Could he be the father she believed he could be? "Tell me," the CEO finally spoke, his voice a deep rumble that cut through the tension. "What's in that bag that makes it worthy of a second look?" Jake's pulse quickened. This was the pivotal moment. He stepped forward, emboldened. "It's not about the bag," he said, the weight of his words steadying him. "The real story isn't about what's inside but what's driven us to have it." A few murmurs of agreement floated through the crowd, and he seized that moment. "Do you know what it's like to struggle? To get back up after failing? Every item in there tells a story of perseverance." His voice grew stronger as he spoke. "Lily doesn't just have dreams, she's watched me fight for hours. She sees a father learning alongside her who learns to love himself as much as he loves her." A gasp from the crowd broke the silence as people exchanged glances. Curiosity laced with understanding began to ripple through the audience. Yes, Jake thought, it's happening. He could feel the dynamics shifting. This was no longer just his moment, it was a moment for everyone. As if trying to reclaim the narrative, the CEO's assistant interjected again, her tone laced with condescension. And what makes you think anyone cares to understand? It's easy to romanticize struggle, but the reality is, this world rewards competence, not sob stories. At that, Jake felt something crack inside him, a fierce protectiveness for the resilience he had built. Is that all you see? He shot back, allowing his own frustration to color his words. Competence is built through learning, through embracing the very struggles you dismiss. For every child who grows up with privilege, there are countless others who form character through facing adversity head-on. The CEO's eyes glinted with something akin to respect, and Jake pressed forward. I ask you to look beyond the tangible items. There's a determination in each one, a lesson learned through mistakes. He could see some in the crowd nodding recognition, igniting in them what they had long buried under layers of privilege and expectations. Jake's heart surged. He was no longer just speaking for himself but was becoming a voice for others, a reflection of the unacknowledged struggles that lay beneath the surface. The moment felt electric, charged with potential. Yet, even amidst this flickering hope, shadows of dread lingered. Would they really choose to listen? Or was this just another fleeting instance of empathy before returning to their comforts? As the crowd continued to reflect on his words, the looming question remained. What would it take for them to embrace the truth he had laid bare? He had opened a door, but would anyone step through it? He glanced at Lily, who stood steadfast beside him, unaware of the profound shift her presence alone had initiated. In that moment, Jake understood that he had not only fought for himself but had inadvertently ignited a fire in others around him, urging them to examine their narratives. The tension shimmered with uncertainty as Jake sought the CEO's response. But there was another layer surfacing, one he hadn't anticipated. What if this situation could evolve even further, leading to a confrontation he hadn't considered? His pulse raced with the realization that beyond acceptance lay the potential for an unexpected challenge. Now, as he hovered on the brink of change, one undeniable thought gripped him with fierce urgency. What new revelations awaited him in the decisions to come, and would he possess the courage not just to confront them, but to embrace them? Jake felt the charged atmosphere around him tremble, each heartbeat syncing with the palpable energy that enveloped the audience. The CEO's eyes narrowed, a flicker of curiosity battling with skepticism. What had begun as a singular confrontation was morphing into a collective awakening, shifting perceptions, and possibly setting a new course not just for Jake but for everyone witnessing his stand. Very well, the CEO finally replied, his voice carrying a weight that felt momentous. Let us say I believe you. What is your plan, Jake? How do you plan to transform that struggle into something palpable, something others can resonate with? Or are we simply sharing stories for emotional impact? Jake felt the tremor of nerves dance in his stomach. The challenge hung thick in the air. This was not just about standing up against condescension, this was about practical steps toward a vision, his vision. I want to create a curriculum that emphasizes resilience and real-life learning for children, something that honors the grit every child possesses, regardless of their background. Things that will teach them that their struggles can shape them into powerful individuals. The CEO raised an eyebrow, the moment stretching out painfully as he contemplated this unexpected reply. The crowd remained hushed, the weight of Jake's ambitions hanging like a ripe fruit, waiting for someone to reach out and take a bite. But in the depths of Jake's mind, a nagging voice questioned if he had just overstepped. What credibility do I have to speak about transforming education? The self-doubt squirmed like an unwelcome guest at a celebration. Your lived experience, a voice from the crowd piped up, coaxing out a smattering of agreement. It was a man who had initially eyed Jake with skepticism, now leaning forward in interest. In that moment, Jake felt a swell of courage. Exactly. I've lived both sides. I've felt the sting of failure and the joy of small victories that compelled me to rise again. If I can harness those experiences into something actionable, then perhaps I can influence even one child to rise stronger. The CEO nodded slowly as if weighing each word. That's all well and good, but love and struggle do not run businesses, Jake. You need a strategy, a way to connect with stakeholders who can provide funding, a pathway to execute your vision without losing your essence. The urgency surged within Jake, forcing him to focus. I'll create workshops. It starts with grassroots. A collaboration with local schools. We could engage with parents, invite entrepreneurs who've walked similar paths to share their insights on overcoming adversity. What if I could transform community spaces into learning hubs, where kids learn from everyday experiences, not just textbooks? The challenge ignited a fire in him, yet a deeper realization loomed like a specter, the fear of failure. What if they don't buy it? What if I am just a dreamer without direction? He felt Lily's gaze, unwavering, locking with his in mutual understanding, staving off the encroaching doubts. If you invest your heart into this, it will resonate, she assured him silently. The CEO was leaning forward now, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. And if they won tea? If you risk all of that emotional investment and it goes nowhere? It was a question that felt like a knife, slicing through Jake's determination. The enormous risk of pouring himself into a project that could fall flat loomed threateningly. Would he be able to bear yet another failure? Jake's throat felt tight. But in the depths of his uncertainty, an illuminating thought emerged. Could the mere act of trying be its own form of success? Even if it doesn't take off immediately, I believe the seed sown will grow in time. Each small step echoes a lesson learned, a resilient spirit kindled, Jake articulated, finally embracing the idea that success was not a destination but a journey full of trials. The vibe shifted palpably. The crowd leaned in closer, this once disparate individuals now aligning with his vision. As Jake spoke, he saw possibilities unfold like the petals of a blooming flower. Just as he felt he was rounding a corner, the CEO threw a curveball. You talk big, Jake. But talk is cheap. Let us see if you really have what it takes. I want you to present a formal proposal, complete with forecasts and stakeholder engagement plans. You have 1 month. Jake's heart dropped momentarily at the enormity of the request. A month? Could he crystallize abstract hopes into concrete plans within that time frame? The weight of expectation bore down heavily. But just as anxiety threatened to constrict him, he lifted his chin. Could this be the chance he's long sought, the proving ground that would transform him from being seen as merely a father into an architect of change? Jake felt a surge of determination claw its way through the apprehension. Challenge accepted. The CEO's eyes glimmered with challenge as he nodded, and Jake realized he had been granted the opportunity to not just confront his demons but to build something meaningful. But a disquieting thought loomed: what if he stumbled, this time with more at stake than ever before? With 1 month on the clock, the real question wasn't just about the proposal but about whether he could transform himself amidst the mounting pressure. How could he harness pain, doubt, and love to forge a vision capable of compelling a room full of skeptics? This was merely the beginning. As Jake left the auditorium, the anticipation wrapped tightly around him like a coiling snake. Each step echoed away from the crowd but drove him deeper into his thoughts. The weight of the proposal hung heavily in his mind, and with it came a creeping dread. The 1 month deadline circled like a predator, a constant reminder of his self-imposed pressure. What if it all crumbled? He slumped into his car. The interior felt both familiar and foreign, with its scent of stale coffee and worn leather. A glance in the rearview mirror reflected a man who was, perhaps, on the brink of something invigorating or utterly devastating. Was he prepared to navigate this new reality? His phone buzzed, snapping him from his reverie. It was Lily. So, what now? With a heavy sigh, Jake typed a response, thinking about the myriad tasks ahead and the crisp uncertainty of each. I need to outline a plan, workshops, stakeholders, funding strategies. Everything needs to align. The screen flickered with her immediate response. You got this, Jake. Just take it one step at a time. A reassuring message, yet one that did little to quell the chaos swirling inside him. The image of the CEO, pushing him to defend his vision, replayed in his mind. How could someone see potential in a dream half-formed? Determined to transform resolve into action, Jake settled down at the kitchen table when he got home. He lined up blank sheets of paper, each a daunting expanse of white urging him to fill them with purpose. Opening his laptop, he began typing, "Workshop objectives." Each keystroke felt like a flicker of hope lighting up an empty space. But the ambivalence flickered alongside. He'd never run a workshop, let alone aimed so high. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Jake could hear his fears whispering about inadequacy. Who was he to challenge the system? Did he even have the skills to pull it off? Reminding himself of that nurturing voice from the crowd, your lived experience, Jake took a deep breath and focused on the research he needed. What did effective life coaching look like for children? He navigated through countless articles, absorbing information like a sponge. Hours slipped away until his eyes burned, and the sun dipped below the horizon. Backlit by soft orange hues, he realized this was about more than just others. It was about him, too. This could be his salvation. He realized he needed to build a team, a group of like-minded individuals who shared his passion and perhaps could mitigate his weaknesses. By dawn, a list began to take shape: educators, parents, potential mentors. They could guide him, help flesh out the curriculum he had in mind. Yet with each name he penned down, another wave of doubt rushed in. Would they be open to his vision? Could they trust an everyday father to lead them into untested terrain? His thoughts spiraled, oscillating between conviction and uncertainty. But there was no turning back now. He had committed to the challenge, and he had no more time for self-doubt. Over the coming days, Jake became immersed in only the work. He pored over manuals and video interviews with experts in pedagogy and resilience training, shifting slowly from uncertainty to competency. Each nugget of insight sharpened his vision. But as Jake began to draft the proposal, something unsettling gnawed at him, a recurring question about his authority. In seeking collaborators, he wondered if he would be met with raised eyebrows and dismissive smirks, a reminder of his past failures. He had to confront not only the external hurdles but his internal nemesis, the shadow of inadequacy. Could he challenge this hidden voice, or would it cripple him? He sat back, willing himself to breathe deeply, prepared to forge ahead. The outlines of his workshops glimmered with possibility. Would he truly succeed in igniting the lives of children, allowing them to harness their struggles? With this realization, Jake understood the importance of his emotional investment in this venture, not only for those he aspired to inspire but for himself. But even as he constructed plans, the clock kept ticking. The echoes of the CEO's challenge reverberated louder. Now, for the first time, success felt tangible yet frightfully elusive. The month's end neared with each sunset, and Jake could sense the walls of pressure building around him. Still, what he had drafted was a fragile thing. It could shatter with one miscalculated move. Just before midnight, a final thought came creeping in. What would the CEO truly expect when he grilled Jake with pointed questions about his plans? The anxiety settled thickly in his throat. Would he pass this test, or would everything he had worked for slip through his fingers? The moment of truth was approaching. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, igniting shadows like flickering doubts in Jake's mind. He had always enjoyed early mornings, but today they felt like an unrelenting spotlight on his growing anxiety. The deadline loomed large, the proposal a fragile construct that could dissipate with a single misstep. But he had no choice. The clock was ticking, and the world wouldn't wait for his fears to subside. Jake gathered his materials, bulky folders filled with an amalgamation of ideas and research. His car felt like a steel cage, amplifying the anxiety pulsating in his chest as he headed toward the community center. He was about to meet several potential collaborators, each of whom could either elevate his vision or deepen his dread of inadequacy. Stepping into the center, the faint hum of chatter mixed with the scent of brewed coffee greeted him. He studied the faded decor, feeling the pressure of his surroundings close in like a vice. These were seasoned professionals, educators with miles of experience that he could only dream of attaining. What if they saw through him, recognized the layers of self-doubt that threatened to undermine his commitment? As he approached the group engrossed in conversation, he recalled Lily's words. Take it one step at a time. Gathering his resolve, he introduced himself, his voice unsteady but firm. The initial icebreakers felt trivial, yet essential, allowing him to carve a space for himself at this table of expertise. When he presented his vision, a hush fell over the room. Jake's heart raced as he listed the workshop goals, underscoring how they could empower children to confront and overcome their fears. He watched as expressions shifted from curiosity to skepticism. He caught murmurs of uncertainty. "Have you implemented something like this before?" one of the educators asked, her brow furrowed. "No," he admitted, the word hanging heavily. "But I believe my lived experience as a father gives me insight into their struggles." The vulnerability of this admission pricked at his ego, but it also felt refreshing in a world bogged down by pretenses. The conversation shifted as they began to engage with his ideas, questioning and critiquing but also offering their perspectives, weaving their experiences into his narrative. They seemed to find a spark in his passion, a shared commitment to the growth of children. Yet, even as the dialogue flowed, Jake couldn't shake the nagging concern about whether his lack of formal credentials would eclipse everything he brought to the table. After the meeting, Jake lingered, his resolve shaken but ignited with newfound purpose. He had successfully articulated his vision, albeit imperfectly, which had generated genuine interest. But there remained a crucial piece, a mentor figure, someone who could help him navigate the complexities ahead, and in a surprising encounter, he saw her. An older woman with silvery hair and an air of quiet strength approached him. Her expression was not one of judgment but rather keen interest. She had been one of the educators who had engaged deeply with his proposal. "I admire your confidence in presenting such an ambitious plan, Jake." "Not many would dare," she said, offering her business card. "We need individuals like you who are willing to challenge the norm. Let us work together." Stunned, Jake took the card. Her faith in him was a rock amidst the swirling tides of doubt. As he walked to his car, the sun started to dip near the horizon, a metaphor for fading fears as he grasped the possibility of collaborative growth. Could this be the turning point he so desperately sought? But just as he began to feel the weight lift off his shoulders, the question still lingered. Would he be able to rally support not just for his ideas, but for himself as someone worthy of leading? Jake leaned against his car, heart racing with exhilaration and fear alike. There was still much to do, and time was no ally. The moment of truth loomed closer on the calendar, a reminder that success could either transform or further expose his vulnerabilities. As he drove home, new thoughts emerged, a mixture of hope and fear. But what would tomorrow's encounter with the CEO hold? Would he be ready to defend everything he was building, or would the past dictate his future? The upcoming meeting felt less like a presentation and more like an impending judgment day, leaving Jake grappling with his own worthiness. Was he truly ready to face that pivotal moment? The next morning, the sun forced its way through the blinds, illuminating the room and adding a layer of warmth to the chilly atmosphere that clung to Jake's resolve. Beyond the faint sound of birds chirping outside, the silence weighed heavily on him, reminding him that today marked the day he would meet the CEO. This was not merely a meeting, it felt like a test, and for the first time, a flicker of something different appeared amidst his determination. Jake meticulously reviewed his notes, his eyes skimming over the bulleted points of his presentation. Each page felt like a lifeline, a promise of what he could achieve if only he stayed grounded. The older woman's encouraging words looped in his mind, a refrain combating the doubts that threatened to swell again and drown him. He needed to channel that confidence, to draw from it like a renewable source of energy. Arriving at the corporate building was akin to stepping onto another planet, one ruled by polished suits and tiled floors that reflected more than just light. They reflected status, power, and a lifetime of successes he had yet to obtain. He felt small, a lone wanderer in a world of giants. As he parked the car and walked toward the entrance, every step felt laden with the weight of potential judgment. Once inside, Jake was greeted by the sterile smell of coffee and a hum of hushed conversations. He spotted the CEO, a tall figure with a commanding presence, engaging in dialogue with another colleague. From a distance, she seemed larger than life, untouchable. The fear of inadequacy stirred violently within him. What if his ideas seemed ludicrous to her? What if she quickly dismissed him? A friendly assistant beckoned him, and with shaky hands, he retrieved the business card from his pocket. As he stepped forward, Jake remembered Lily's reassurance, "You can do this. Just remember why you started." The essence of his motivation felt more important than any credential he lacked. It wasn't about the accolades, it was about the children, about breaking cycles of fear and inadequacy. The assistant's soft voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "You're up next, Jake." As he approached the CEO, time seemed to stretch and contract, each second fueling his mix of excitement and dread. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Good morning. Let us hear what you've got," she replied, a hint of curiosity evident in her tone. Starting with a well-rehearsed introduction, Jake felt momentum build with each word. He spoke of his vision and interwove personal anecdote stories of his own childhood fears and more recent experiences as a father striving to cultivate resilience in his children. Her eyebrow lifted when he confessed his lack of formal experience. He braced himself for her disappointment, but instead, there was a flicker of interest followed by a thoughtful pause. "Your perspective as a father is invaluable," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Children need authenticity. They can spot insincerity a mile away. You may not have the credentials, but you bring something richer to the table experience." The compliment uplifted him, reigniting the flame of confidence. They fell into a deeper dialogue, not merely a presentation but a conversation brimming with shared ideas, challenges, and avenues for collaboration. He noted her thoughtful questions and the way they challenged him to think critically. In that moment, Jake recognized a profound shift within himself. It was as if his self-doubt began to peel away, exposing a core strength he had been reluctant to embrace. But just as he felt the spark ignite, a thought pierced through the haze. This connection could be pivotal, but what if his ideas didn't align with her vision for the company? The discussion deepened, touching on logistics and practicalities. Each suggestion she made stoked Jake's passion, but uncertainty kept creeping in. When she inquired about potential pitfalls, glimpses of the past reared their heads, making him hesitate. Would he falter here, just as he had in past endeavors? He had to confront that nagging doubt. He needed to be resolute, to demonstrate that he could manage not only the concept but the repercussions as well. Jake took a deep breath, collecting every ounce of bravery within him. His voice steady and clear, he began to outline potential challenges and how he intended to address them. Suddenly, it hit him this was his moment, not just to present his work, but to claim his place in this narrative. He wasn't just a hopeful, inexperienced father, he was an innovator brave enough to come forth despite the risks. As the meeting concluded, the CEO leaned back in her chair, her gaze holding a mix of respect and curiosity. "I appreciate your openness, Jake. You've got something here," she stated, her tone leaving the door ajar for future dialogue. Jake left the meeting room with a palpable sense of exhilaration tinged with doubt. He had shared not just his proposal but a slice of himself, a raw honesty that he feared might lead to vulnerability. Yet, that very vulnerability could also become his defining strength. But as he stepped into the hallway, a kernel of foreboding twisted in his stomach. Was this only the beginning of a more monumental confrontation? What hidden challenges awaited him now that he had offered a piece of his heart? He couldn't shake the feeling that the path ahead was fraught with obstacles yet unseen, leaving Jake grappling with unanswered questions. Could he truly stand firm against the inevitable criticisms and pressures of the corporate ladder? The days following the meeting blurred into a whirlwind of anticipation and self-doubt. Jake found himself replaying snippets of the conversation with the CEO on repeat in his mind. Each interaction felt heavier than the last, as if he was sifting through debris of a past life that no longer suited him. The initial fire of determination that had ignited in their meeting flickered, losing to shadows of insecurity. His workdays shifted into a combination of mundane responsibilities and fervent attempts to innovate, yet the thrill of his concept faced stern resistance from within him. The well of ideas he had previously drawn from now seemed strangely shallow, and he began to question whether the CEO's interest had merely been a fleeting moment of kindness. What if she had been impressed not by his ideas but by the resonance of his vulnerability? What did authenticity mean in a world dominated by results? Each evening after work, Jake returned home to find his children eager for his attention, which he grappled to give while wrestling with his own discontent. As he sat on the couch, playing a board game with them, the laughter in the room rang hollow. The weight of uncertainty pushed against the joy that filled the air. Would they see through the facade he wore, a father who seemed to struggle against the tide of opportunity? Amid this turmoil, the phone rang one afternoon, or rather, vibrated, like a pulse summoning him from the depths of his thoughts. It was the CEO asking to meet again. His heart raced as he read the message. This was it. This could be his chance to clarify his earlier thoughts, to share the ideas that felt lost in the ocean of his apprehension. Or was it a prelude to delivering bad news? He resolved to prepare more thoroughly, and with every ounce of will, he dove into research and potential strategies, refusing to let inertia win. Still, doubts taunted him. It was challenging to suppress the whisper asking whether he truly belonged in this new space. Dressed sharply for the second meeting, he looked into the mirror and rehearsed his words. The reflection staring back sparked an uneasy realization. He was not to simply convince others of his capabilities but also to convince himself. The moment of truth arrived with an even more potent surge of adrenaline when he entered the familiar corporate building. The polished floors and bright lights replayed the psychological game that made him question his worth at every turn. But today, he had evidence of his ambition written in his notes. Armed with data, innovations, and strategies, he crossed the threshold of the CEO's office, a place that had previously instilled a sense of fear. "Jake. You look prepared," she greeted, her presence commanding yet welcoming. He cleared his throat and forced a smile. "Thank you for having me again." As they delved into the nuances of his proposal, a newfound spark began to align his thoughts with confidence. Their conversation unfolded organically, each question from her feeling less like an inquisition and more like an invitation to explore the depths of his insight. Jake soon lost track of time, flowing through concepts, practically dancing with the dialogue. Yet, as he shared his vision, a subtle shift in her demeanor caught him off guard. A hint of skepticism crept into her voice when she challenged his ambition against the harsh realities of the corporate environment. "This company thrives on tradition, Jake. Ideas like yours are often met with resistance. How will you manage the pushback if it comes?" The question resonated deeply, clawing into the fabric of his self-assurance. Could he manage that potential conflict? The walls immediately encased him, pulling back layers of hesitation he thought he had shed. In that moment, it became apparent that the true test lay not in defending his ideas but in confronting his own limitations. The shadows of past failures hovered nearby, and for a fleeting second, Jake felt the weight of that familiar dread settling back into his bones. He hesitated, caught between fear and the shimmering possibility of success. But then he remembered his children. They were not just the heart of his mission but also the fuel of his determination. "I realize it won't be easy," Jake stated, his voice steadier than he felt. "But I believe that true innovation comes from resilience and facing the fears that arise. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and tackle any challenges head-on." The CEO tilted her head, no longer scrutinizing him through a lens of skepticism but rather through one of measured consideration. "And that resilience is what might just give you an edge, Jake." But could he really harness that resilience in the face of corporate challenges that lay ahead? Doubt flickered like a candle in the wind, whispering caution against his newfound resolve, leaving Jake grappling with the foundations of his own ambition. What real, lasting strategy could he devise to ensure he didn't crumble against the tides of opposition he'd yet to face? He walked out of the CEO's office, the weight of their conversation still pressing down on him. A silence enveloped him in the corridor, punctuated only by the rhythmic tapping of his shoes against the polished tiles. Each step seemed to echo the challenges that loomed ahead, yet a flicker of determination ignited within him. He had faced an uncomfortable reality check, and instead of shying away, he felt a pull toward exploring that very conflict. Back at his desk, Jake rifled through papers, looking for a sense of direction. Every time he caught himself spiraling into uncertainty, he forced his thoughts back to his children, his reason for striving. They had a way of grounding him, reminding him that the stakes were higher than personal ambition. This was about paving the way for their futures. As he immersed himself in the responsibilities that demanded attention, he juggled minor projects while keeping the pulse on his larger proposal. He realized that innovation isn't just about a single idea but a process. Iterations, failures, and insights would lead to growth. This was a game of resilience, not for presentation alone but as a continuous cycle of development. He spent his evenings drafting a plan that included research on companies that had faced similar resistance. As he pieced together a strategy, Jake visualized his approach in the context of the corporate environment he now navigated. The tension he felt earlier morphed into a focused energy. Where he once saw pushback as a wall, he began to see it as an opportunity to strengthen his argument. The following days solidified his resolve. Each morning, he recited affirmations to himself, centering his mind before diving into the often chaotic atmosphere of corporate life. But more importantly, he made a point to engage his coworkers differently. Instead of approaching them with the singular aim of proving his ideas were valid, he sought their insights, inviting them to collaborate. Jake sought to uncover their thoughts on innovation, generating a sense of shared purpose rather than isolation. However, the deeper he engaged, the more he encountered skepticism from certain colleagues who had long thrived on the status quo. At times, those conversations turned tense, and he walked away questioning his position in the team. But doubt was gradually losing its grip. Each incident became a lesson in communication. He started adopting active listening, understanding the nuances of their concerns before responding with his vision. This practice allowed him to weave his ideas with theirs, showing how innovation could complement rather than dismantle established practices. One night, while up late, he opened a blank document, determined to articulate not only what he aimed to present to the CEO but also his rejuvenated philosophy. His fingers floated above the keyboard, and he hesitated. Should he merely outline a continuation of his previous concepts, or could he inject them with the spirit of compromise he had learned? With each keystroke, clarity emerged. He realized that true innovation wasn't a solitary pursuit but required advocacy, empathy, and an inclusive approach to problem solving. He found himself concluding with a plan that emphasized how collective input could lead to amplifying their innovation. The next step awaited him, the imminent chance to present this gameplay approach to the collaborative team, aligning their expertise with the bold ideas he wished to pursue. It felt like walking into a game with a strategy, but Jake couldn't shake the voices of doubt just yet. Would he be able to articulate this evolution convincingly? The day came to gather his colleagues, and as he prepared, uncertainty flared once more, making his heart race. Jake took a deep breath, stepping out of his comfort zone further than he had before. But amidst the palpable tension, a thought struck him with intensity. What if this revelation about sharing responsibility was exactly the connection he needed to foster support from the very people who seemed resistant to change? Time would soon reveal whether Jake could genuinely inspire confidence in not only his vision but also the united front he hoped to build. In that moment, he knew he was preparing not just to present an idea, but to step firmly into the arena of leadership. Could this presentation be the turning point that not only defined his path forward, but also turned detractors into allies? Jake approached the conference room, a spiral of thoughts swinging between anticipation and trepidation. His heart raced with the weight of his preparation and the hope of genuine collaboration. The room buzzed with familiar faces, each embodying separate stories of their journeys, and as he entered, Jake sensed the tension in the air, a palpable mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady, recalling the recent shifts in his perspective. He had gone from seeking validation to aiming for unity. Today, I want to explore how we can reframe our approach to education using collaboration as our foundation. The silence felt like a blanket, but Jake pressed on, feeling the power of his words. He presented his original idea, but now with an added element, the inclusion of their collective strengths. He outlined the necessity of incorporating feedback from the whole team, appealing to their expertise and experiences, thus transforming his vision into a shared endeavor. "I know I don't come from your realm of credentials," he admitted, voicing the concern that once paralyzed him, "but growth comes from many voices, which is why I'm here. Together, we can make a difference." As Jake spoke, he felt a surge of authenticity course through him. Each sentence felt like a layer of armor shedding, revealing a commitment to mutual growth rather than solitary ambition. A few nods emerged in the audience, and inch by inch, the atmosphere shifted from apprehension to engagement. One seasoned educator leaned forward, her brow relaxing. "I appreciate that you recognize the value of our insights, Jake. It's rare to see a new idea willing to mesh with the old. Can you expand on how you foresee this collaboration working in practice? The question provided a platform for Jake to articulate the action steps for Unity, monthly brainstorming sessions, feedback loops, and pilot programs that would harness their experiences. He saw agreement ripple through the room, granting him the confidence he'd been searching for. As conversations launched back and forth, spirits lifted and perspectives unfurled. They began crafting the outlines of a collaborative curriculum designed to teach resilience through hands-on experience while honoring each child's unique journey. No longer did he feel like an outsider but rather a catalyst for change. When the meeting concluded, the room erupted in applause, a wave of validation washing over him. He walked away with an invigorated sense of purpose. His vulnerability had forged connections that transcended insecurities. He was not a single father begging for acknowledgement but a budding leader nurturing new ideas rooted in collaboration. Amidst the success, Jake still faced lingering doubts. Would the CEO recognize this transformation? The answer came swiftly, however. Days later, the CEO invited him to present his updated approach, one that demonstrated the unified commitment of the team. As the meeting unfolded, he felt a newfound strength behind each word. We not only have a vision but a concrete plan built on your input, the people who know our children best. This time, he saw admiration in her gaze, a flicker of newfound respect. You've grown, Jake, she finally acknowledged. This isn't just a plan, it's a movement, one that could transform our educational approach significantly. Elated pride surged within him. This culmination was not merely a validation of his ideas but also a testament to his evolution, his journey from a beleaguered single father to a recognized force of change. By harnessing the feedback and insights of his team, he had transcended boundaries he'd once feared. Jake left the meeting, walking with a sense of lightness in his step. He had achieved a rare manifestation of his ambition's solid confidence born from collaboration. His competence, once shadowed by doubt, was now recognized. Weeks later, launch day arrived for their pilot program. As he looked around at the participating children bustling with excitement, he felt a rush of fulfillment. This was the achievement he had envisioned, a legacy for Lily and children like her, filled with purpose and resilience. Reflecting on his journey, Jake understood that he had finally embraced who he was: a father, a leader, and someone who turned challenges into opportunities. This was not merely a job, it was a life lived with intent and courage. Together, they were building a bridge toward understanding, healing, and growth. It wasn't only about his transformation but about coming together to create something greater. Jake had proven that dreams, when shared, could blossom into reality, and he stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Now is the moment to embrace your own journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread understanding. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's journey. Your input matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories know how important it is to support the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.